company covering everything. I'm talking that news you ain't heard of, cause you know it's getting buried. Social justice, yeah, the stuff you need to know about. Fucking politics, the corporate news won't cover. You know they don't think that you could see under, but you can now, cause the people we cover, they may not be famous, but their stories should be heard. Yeah, every voice matters, we should rise and fall together.
Hey. Welcome to Wednesday and Hair of the Dog. Thank you, everybody. I am Carrie Barber for Progressive Insider, and I will introduce to you my lovely and talented co-host here, Andy Kennedy. Good morning, Andy. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
It's been a day.
So the part of a day.
Things get started early in my house, so by the time other people get up, I've already lived half the day through. So yeah, lots of things, but lots of really cool things went on last night that if you're watching corporate media, you will have missed completely. So I want to get into some of those things real fast. And then, oh, hey, good morning to Mike Patino. He's one of our patron supporters. Thank you, Mike. But there were some really cool things that happened overnight, some stories that we're going to be working on, and then we have today a special guest. So real fast, Andy, were you aware that there was a massive election yesterday?
Vaguely. I was kind of aware of it, but based on polling stations, it couldn't have been very big.
Oh, yeah, no. So some of these elections will not be decided for days and weeks. But I was out scouring headlines of corporate media because that's what I do. And there was this one headline from CNN I absolutely have to share. I think it was it made me laugh. So I'm going to put that up real quick. So this was CNN's headline. It says 3 takeaways from primary night in New York, Kentucky, and North Carolina. They said 3. Andy, your top 3 things you think that CNN covered?
Let's see. Why people don't like green ketchup.
Okay.
Let's see. How to get red wine stains out of a carpet.
Okay. That's very helpful. Yep.
Yes. And why do they call them buildings when they're already done building them?
Okay, those are all 3 very relevant things that CNN would have covered. However, in their article, one of the things that they covered, obviously, was AOC's win. She won by I didn't check it this morning, but last night it was like 72%. She was in the lead. It was amazing. But that was the only race that they covered. Weird. It was like AOC was a given, and here you go, progressives, take your dog bone, right? So no big deal. The other thing that they covered, this is the one that made me laugh. They covered voting in Kentucky, and their headline was, voting goes relatively smoothly in Kentucky. And immediately I went, what the fuck? No, it did not. So here's CNN being complicit with voter disenfranchisement. And they talk about, oh, well, yes, they drastically reduced polling places from 3,700 to fewer than 200, neglecting, of course, that some of the city centers where mostly people of color vote, 600,000 people had to share one polling place. And they said that, oh, only lines were about an hour. No, in Louisville, you had people standing there till 9 p.m. And in fact, one of the candidates that was challenging the corporate Democrat, Amy McGrath, he had to get a judge to order an injunction to keep that polling place open till 9 p.m. So we still don't have the vote totals from Louisville, Kentucky. But according to CNN, it was no big deal. Nothing happened. It was just, whatever. So,
Well, nothing to see here. Move along.
Right.
I mean, compared to the last Kentucky election, everything went smooth.
Right. So, yeah, pay no attention to what was actually going on. And then the third thing that they covered, CNN, was that a 24-year-old Republican won without Trump's endorsement. So they covered this particular candidate, Madison Cawthorn, Cawthorn, 24. He's going to be 25 before he is sworn in, which is a requirement in Kentucky. Most other states, it's 18. So he won without Trump's endorsement against the incumbent, Linda Bennett, a realtor that did have Trump's endorsement. So CNN thought that this was really big news, that somebody won in the GOP primary without Trump's endorsement. Well, when you go and take a look at this particular candidate, Madison, holy shit. This guy is probably as right-wing as they come, and maybe more. So that's CNN celebrating that win. Way to go, CNN.
He's probably got tattoos that he needs to cover up all the time.
You know what? We're going to do some digging on it. And then, so the other piece that CNN completely missed, in Kentucky and New York in particular, it was a blue wave, but it was Bernie blue. It was progressives that won exponentially. So there were some incumbents.
No big deal.
Right. So all of these races where you had these progressives winning, there were a few that did not win, some of them that we interviewed here. But it's one of those things where you got to call back to Marie Newman. She ran twice. And then on her second time, she was able to prevail. So this is how you beat big money. And we're going to cover all of that on Friday when we welcome back Warren and his data stuff. So
sorting hat.
Yes, his sorting hat, because he's got information on progressive wins all across the country. So we want to make sure that we follow up with that, because there are so many progressives winning, especially in red states, West Virginia and Nevada, that holy cow, corporate media is not going to bring this to you, but we certainly will, because this is newsworthy. I think what it shows is not just the tide is changing when it comes to tearing down systemic racism and all of these things that come with it, but also how the Dem Inter folks are really making some significant headway. So I think there's over 114 new progressives that will be entering Congress. That is huge, huge.
Wow. Oh, wait a minute. No big deal.
No, it really is a big deal. So you see the Dem exit with formation of a new major party, and then the Dem Inter. I mean, this is huge. So while we were going through all of this turmoil and upheaval, keep this in mind that we haven't stopped fighting for our own democracy, right? So what we saw in Kentucky and even in New York, we had Lauren Ashcraft had a bunch of people send her information about their mail-in ballot, where they got a mail-in ballot and her race wasn't even on it. There were races missing from the mail-in ballot. How does that even happen, right? So New York is a same state where, 200,000 registered voters were just dropped from the polls, and it was done by Democrats. So it's not just Kentucky that we're looking at that's backwards, it's New York. So all of these things kind of come into play when we talk about the entire landscape of policy. And Rome had a good show last night, Rome's Rebellion, where he was talking about what it means to live in Detroit and have that kind of segregation. Well, Michigan primaries had some of the same results, right? Where there were few polling places, and they were right in the middle of the COVID epidemic and all of that upheaval. So all of these things truly matter, especially in the down ballot races, not just the primaries. So one thing that's interesting here is all of these news sites, when you go to look at the primary race, all they give you is the top ticket, presidential. So for those of you who are still counting delegates, and you should be, Bernie took 19% in New York, so he will be eligible for delegates. Kentucky, it doesn't look like he will. As of this morning, it was like 11, 12%. So those ballots are still being counted. There is a chance he may be able to take some of those if he gets over the 15% threshold. So good morning to everybody joining.
There was, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, Carrie, but I heard that in some counties, torn down Confederate statues got more votes than Bernie.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. And that's one of the things that there are two stories that we're going to be working on here. One is the all of these myths around the culture of the Confederate flag, and there have been so many good reports about where this comes from. This is, you know, honestly, just sneak peek. 1964, Strom Thurmond, who served in Congress for like 20, 30 years, good friend of Joe Biden and all of the people in the Republican Party, grand wizard of the KKK. That's where the propaganda came from to revitalize and build these statues. These statues haven't been there for hundreds of years. They've been there for less than one lifetime. So it's part of the bigger lie that segregationists are still telling this morning. So we'll work on that. And there was a story out of Wisconsin that was interesting. And for me, living in Chicago, I see parallels. There is a rumor that this house was a known sex trafficking house where young girls, teenagers, whatever, were being kidnapped and held and sold. And neighbors had suspicions about this house. Well, the rumor is that it was actually owned by a police officer in Milwaukee. And what happened yesterday is the parents and the community surrounded this house, demanded that the police come and do something. Well, the police didn't. They waited a good 12 hours and only showed up when the entire neighborhood was now surrounding this house. So then you can see police out there in riot gear, and the police knocked on the door and said, oh, we didn't see these two missing girls, no Amber Alert, no nothing. So the community took action. And the same thing happened here in Chicago, where the mother of a teenager who was in the process of being recruited for sex trafficking knew where she was. The police wouldn't go there because the person who asked them to be there was Jedediah Brown. And Jedediah was in the middle of a lawsuit for civil rights violations, so the police refused to go. So we'll have that story as soon as we piece it together, but you can see it trending on Twitter and social media. So really important things happening that corporate news is not covering. So, Andy, do you have anything to add before we bring in our very special special guest this morning? So I know you have to leave early. So
I know. I just actually just enjoying the outdoors today. Like had video, just watching the trees gently sway. You know.
Andy's in his place of Zen.
That's right.
That's wonderful.
Do the rest of it.
I love your T-shirt, by the way.
Thank you. It, I believe it is a one of a kind so far. So far,
yep. So far, you have the only one in existence. So I want one. I don't have one.
You can have one, but you can't have this one.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Then it's all good. But yeah, so that is actually coming where we've had quite a number of requests for some of our shirts, and we are getting ready to make those available to people. So yeah, so there's that. So all right, without further ado now, I want to welcome back a very special guest. We early on, and I checked it out, it was like 21 weeks ago, we did a story on Nick. There he is. Hey, Nick. Good morning. We did this wonderful story of Nick, who was being recruited and sent to South Carolina on behalf of the Sanders campaign to work on getting votes out. And we kind of kept in touch with Nick and all he's doing, and then happened to come across the story where there was some issue with your family. So Nick, first, welcome. How are you doing? And then let's get right into it. What's going on?
Hey, I'm happy to be on. Thank you for having me. I had there's a lot of attention that needed to be placed on mental health, and this is something I kind of learned personally because I don't know what kind of caused it. I don't know if it was because of what's going on in her personal life. I'm trying to be respectful of their privacy as well, but obviously my sister been under a lot of pressure to just try and survive and being a single mother and all that stuff. So unfortunately, she had like some sort of mental break that kind of altered her personality. One thing I want to be respectful of her as much as I can, but it was pretty devastating for our family, and to kind of deal with that, it was a very big personality change. It pretty much stopped her ability to work. And at the same time, on top of everything that's going on with COVID-19, the fact that we in this economic depression, the fact that we have these protests going on across the country. I mean, you couldn't pick a worse time for this to happen, right? So this is what I was going through, and obviously I was trying to grow my own personal YouTube channel. I was putting out content. I had to stop doing that, and anyone who follows my Twitter page, they would know that I'm pretty open. I'm an open book, and I'm kind of a take it. If you don't like it, you can leave kind of person on there. I share my experiences, and when I go through this, and you can see how it reflects in my politics, because one thing that we struggle with is the fact that we don't have the ability to afford mental health care and the treatment that a lot of people in the upper class may be able to afford. I mean, I never had a therapist. I never had anyone like really talk to us about that kind of stuff before. Like there was like zero focus on mental health in our family. We suffered through this, and this is something I learned like throughout this last few months. I heard stories from people in my family I haven't heard in my entire life.
Well,
Like
Nick,
people telling me about
you bring up a good
mental illness.
point. There's a little bit of a taboo around it, and I will freely admit two things. Number one, we are not streaming on Twitch this morning because we're in solidarity with the survivors of sexual assault and sexual abuse. And Twitch right now has a couple partner levels, who have kind of, well, not sugarcoat it, but they have turned the tables in the narrative against the victim. So victim blaming. And you have this entire, I mean, what is it? 1 in 4 women have gone through sexual abuse and are survivors of sexual assault and end up with chronic PTSD, right? And we don't talk about that, and we don't encourage them to get the help that they need. Now, I fall into both of those categories. I have PTSD, and I am a survivor of the same thing. Not something I'm comfortable talking about yet, but for me, when I went to go get help with a therapist to deal with the PTSD symptoms years ago, there was still this taboo where there's something wrong with me that I need help, and we just don't talk about it. So, Nick, in your family, you said this is not something that was pursued. So, how did those conversations go? How do you get past that hurdle that no, this is okay, just like you would go to a doctor for a physical thing, this is okay to get help from a professional? What were those conversations like?
Those conversations were tough. We even had intervention from my mom because my mom had her own mental health episode she's still struggling with right now. I'm not sure that was in response to what happened with my sister or whatever, but it's like I said, it could not be worse timing. Both of them have these episodes at the same time, and one big struggle that we had is my mom is very close to my sister, and she's almost like, even though my sister's a grown adult, she's still almost like a guardian in a sense. So both of them have these issues at the same time. Then it didn't help because my mom, she was kind of in a state of denial about everything that was going on, and we couldn't get her help. And we had everyone that come in. It was my brother's idea. Big props to him. He pretty much stepped up to the leadership position throughout this entire crisis that we're going through. He organized an intervention, and it was hard to sit through, man. It was very emotional, and we still couldn't get her to accept that she was going through an issue. Like she just don't want to accept it. And money played a big part of it. That's one of the reasons why she didn't want to get help. Because she's like, I don't want to spend this money for something I don't even really believe it's a thing. Because this is not education that we was taught growing up. And like you said in your personal story, I heard it all the time. Even when I was in South Carolina, I was talking to good friends, and she was talking about the rape culture that exists down there. Where you like, she was like almost everyone she knows. She was a conservative that was volunteering with Bernie Sanders. She said, everyone I know was pretty much sexually assaulted. She was, and there's like no recourse to get justice in those situations down there. And you don't see that much up here as well, but what you see it throughout a lot of cultures and throughout the country. Because I talked to my other friend, she lived in D.C. I literally know a lot of people on Twitter. I don't want to say their names because I respect their privacy. I talked to them like the amount of people who, especially women who survive sexual assault, is insanity. And this is something I'm learning recently, and it was embarrassing because when I was younger in my early 20s, I didn't really understand this kind of stuff. I remember when the Bill Cosby stuff came out. I was thinking like, what? That can't be true. That's insane. I remember having those thoughts. This is something I've been educated on throughout the years now. The culture has been so toxic.
Yeah, and we saw the for anybody who didn't see the TikTok video, there was a woman who did a TikTok and she wanted people to duet it because TikTok disappears like Snapchat, but if you duet it, then you create a chain. And she did the, have you ever with, put your finger down if this and that. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But what was amazing about it is the number of people that could confirm, yes, I have been drugged. Yes, a friend of mine's been drugged. Yes, I have done something that I didn't want to do because I was afraid for myself. And so just having this conversation, we've had we've had two therapists on who talked about self-care. And Nick, you touched on this here about everything that's going on. These are massive social and political upheavals. So you have all of this, and then behind us is this huge threat of annihilation called climate change. And we're not dealing with any of this stuff adequately right now. Then you've got the personal things. So like your mom, you talked about your mom and your sister being so close. So when one person who's very close and very dear to us has a breakdown, our sense of empathy and concern can lead us to having a breakdown too. This is why caregivers of people who have physical and mental issues need to be aware of their own stresses and things like that. So for your family, you decided to host an intervention. So now what did you do about the cost issue? Because that's a barrier for a lot of people. Insurance doesn't cover it. My insurance didn't cover it. And it's like $60 per session. That's a lot of money. So
yeah, I was having conversations with them, and I don't want to misspeak about the plan, but I know through their job, they had like the first 3 like counseling sessions, which I don't think even is adequate on itself. Based on what she's going through, but you get those for free, and then there's some sort of prorated plan you get based on their insurance, but it's still pretty costly on its own because mental health care by itself is very costly. And we've been dealing with my sister trying to get her help and finally get her accepting help, and that once again, my big part is my brother because he picked a big part of the tab up, and the recent money I'll raise gonna help go to him. And go to my mom because she spent a lot of money getting my sister help. Now we gotta get her help. We're like, man, we don't got any money to do that. So I'm very happy that I was able to fundraise the money I did because I have the support base I have on through Rose Twitter. But it's a shame that not everyone had that chance to do that, which is why I'm a fierce advocate of Medicare for all, because thing that I was looking forward to was the mental health care part of it. That's one part that I don't think was even discussed enough by progressive leaders. I think they need to put that in the forefront, and that's something that I'm planning on doing when in the future is putting this the cost of mental health care and the focus of mental health care.
You mean in the future when you run for office, right?
Potentially potentially run for office. It's an idea, but I don't have a ton of political experience, but I have an army. I have people who's gonna support me. So
Plus, you have life
anything,
experience.
if anything,
What was
I'm
that,
more than
Andy?
happy to push the direction to the left, because I promise you, if I run, it's not going to be a milquetoast campaign. It's going to push a lot of boundaries.
Right.
I mean, like for example, I could easily see myself running on a 4-day work week.
Oh, I totally
I'll
support
run
that.
on legalizing all drugs. I run on UBI. Like I'm not. If I'm gonna win, I will win in my way. And even if I'm not able to hit that threshold to win, I'm happy to like just put the conversation where I think it should be at. So it's an idea because I've been blessed with a megaphone and I'm going to use it, right?
So, and Nick, I need to interrupt you here for just a quick second. My apologies. We have to say goodbye to Andy because Andy actually has an appointment he's got to get to. So, Andy, any last thoughts before you get out of here this morning?
Well, because I'm a little pressed for time, I won't get into it. I'm just going to wish Nick luck with all his with all the things that he's got going on, and all the best to his family. And I hope that you guys come out of this stronger and better off. And you know, I did want to say that if you're considering running, we are the progressive left. We prefer our candidates to have no political experience.
That's exactly, boy, isn't that true? So, all right, Andy, we will catch you back here on Friday, and then I want to get in this comment here, Nick, that came from online from Facebook. So this person writes, when I was growing up, I was always cautioned about dressing in a manner to avoid any advances. The onus seemed to be on the girl and not those, and not being out of line. That was pushed by my grandmother and her friends. Luckily, that thought process did not stand with my family. Any untoward behavior towards me, even in the slightest, was dealt with swiftly. No blame was put on me, and I am grateful for my family. So we see this in schools, and Nick, you talked about it when you were growing up. This was never a thing that came up, right? So we still today have dress code violations for a teenage girl wearing a tank top or, shorts. They've got to be measured. So
one reason why, like, being an ally towards feminist issues like this is a no-brainer for me, because I grew up and I seen it. I remember the culture of if a woman dressed a certain way, she kind of deserved whatever sexual harassment she got. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't like said, it wasn't ever explicitly said like that, but it definitely was implied. Like I remember, like, it could get hot over here in Kansas City in the summer, and I remember growing up, you have women that like to express themselves. I can put it that way, through their clothes, and I remember they would get shamed. Luckily, my sister and my female cousins, we had a very strong sense of community, so we never had to worry about them getting harassed, if you know what I mean.
Right, right. And that's part of it. That's so in your family structure, you have the community that we are actually talking about building for everyone. I think you make a tremendously important point there, which is why actions like the Black Lives Matter protest and what we're doing on today with the Twitch blackout, all of these things bring a point to it, but then it's not enough to just stop there, right? So in your family, you guys took the extra step and you took that kind of tough love sort of approach to it to we're not going to let you fall. We're not going to let you stay in this place. We love you too much for that. So we're going to pull you into a space where you can get some help. and come out of this stronger. So do you see that same kind of messaging across the board when we look at everything that's going on? I mean, this is an unfair question, Nick, but I think you can handle it.
The good signs I see is I see that there's a cultural shift that's going on right now regarding mental health. Because like I said, I had these conversations with aunties and with my dad and with a lot of close people about mental health because they saw what we was going through. And I've heard stories that they never talked about before, and I see that people are starting to take their mental health seriously. And one thing that personally helped me, one thing I'm very lucky in the sense that I discovered martial arts very early, and that helped me battle a lot of my demons. But I went through a lot, even with that, even with that even with that device, I still go through my personal demons, and I try to eat a healthier diet. Whenever I don't eat healthy, it hurts. I start to feel it as well. So I take personal precautions on that, but not everyone do that because they don't see the value in it. And I see it in my personal life through other people I know and people that go through their demons. And I have friends that I consider brothers, and this is something that I realized that was very important early on is that you got to have this community of people that love and care for you because the way that humans was developed and the way we are designed to have small communities. And I think what happened, especially in this culture, which I always say that we have a toxic culture, what happens is people get stuck in their cubicles and they get wrapped and obsessed with making money and they fall in love with wealth and they get focused and obsessed on that and they don't have that community, they don't have that support. They fall out of favor with their sisters or brothers, their friends. And these are the people you see that they have everything, and if you wonder why they are depressed, they were going through all these issues. Once again, there's a lot to be said about like chemical imbalances and all that. That's a different conversation. But there's also something to be said about how we are shaping our society and how this is affecting people's mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And this super capitalistic obsession we have towards worker productivity, even at the cost of family and being there for like kids, because like people always want to talk about black men not being there for the kids. My dad wanted to be there. He did, but he's working 60 hours a week.
Exactly. So we're pushing back on these narratives, but real quick, I wanted to touch on this thing you talked about, chemical imbalance. And I had my own experience, and I'm not trying to bring it back to me, but trying to keep privacy for other people. But in my own experience, I had an issue with depression in January and February and could not shake it, couldn't understand what was going on. And then I was due for a physical, and it came back that I was low on D and B vitamins. And so they put me on an aggressive, pretty strong dosage for like 4 days, and like that, I was much better. So this goes to access to healthcare and proper nutrition. And we look at like all across the country where you have food deserts, or the cost of food is, we know that it's cheaper to eat like crap than it is to eat healthy. So we're looking at an entire nation that is being affected by environmental pollution in the social justice communities, in what they are able to afford to eat, lead in the water. All of these things play into it. And you're right. The fact that we don't have mental health care as a forefront to what we allow people to access is a massive issue. And I think you saw it in your family. I saw it personally in what I was doing. And even today, like it's cost prohibitive for me to go and see a counselor for PTSD all the time. So, all right, Nick, you're king for a day. You mentioned Medicare for all. What else do you see is something that we can do in our own communities? Like if you take the example from what your family did for your mom, your sister, how can we translate that into community? Any thoughts on that one?
So there's a few ways we can go about this, right? You have the electoral method, and that's focusing on Medicare for all and getting bills passed. We lost the executive branch. Bernie Sanders lost his race, but we've seen a lot of great things going down in down ballot progressive races. Um, we we seeing on the left winning. You're seeing even exit polls. Medicare for all is surging in popularity. 68% independents support Medicare for all. So, but I don't think you should focus only just on electoral politics. I think there's a lot of direct action that should be done and a lot of organizing and protesting. That's why I love what we're seeing right now with the protesting, the organization that we see in the streets right now, because I think this is truly how you have change. And something I would love to see is more of a almost of a community form of socialism, because right now we have a GoFundMe, which is a large healthcare provider. I mean, why not get rid of the middleman? Why can't we have organized communities that can help cover each other's healthcare costs until we get the Medicare for All bill passed? Now that sounds like a big lofty ideal, but that's the kind of direct action that we need. We need that kind of organization. And I was like, once again, I was able to raise money. I was blessed. I'm able to have a megaphone, but not everyone's able to do that. And one thing I would love to be able to do that to do in my community and try to spread the trend is we don't have to entrap ourselves within this super individual pro-capitalist system that's like everyone for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should focus more on community building and almost like a community socialism where we can pool resources and help take care of each other, because that's what we do in our family, right? And that's the kind of traditions that a lot of communities had throughout their cultural roots that have been whitewashed. There's been cultures that have been more focused on the individual, but if you look at a lot of Latino communities, they always had a culture where they have a family unit that stays together throughout their life. Like it's common where they'll have the grandparent, they'll have the parent, and then they have the children, and they all take care of each other. And then their neighbor would be their cousins who all have family members take care of each other.
Right,
and
right.
Then
So
not only that, you have people of other ethnicities. That was very common in African tribes. So
well,
it's like this is a culture that we can't forget. Go ahead.
yeah. So you just sparked an idea here. So we hear on the message of defund the police, and there is some merit to that, because when you look at how much we're spending for a police force, a militarized police force, a lot of that money could go back to the community. So maybe I'm way older than you, Nick, probably, but I remember we used to have community centers. It wasn't just a pool and a gym and whatever. It was a place for people to meet and to have discussions and to talk about things that are coming up in the neighborhood, issues, problems, celebrations, whatever. So what if part of defunding the police went back to developing community centers and hiring a couple of these social organizers and counselors, certified counselors, to help the community? So we get the mental health, you get the physical, you get the sense of community. So it's kind of like adopting the same model that you're talking about on a family situation and expanding it into a community.
And you notice that the critics of defund the police, they always straw man an argument, and they never present it because they realize that we have an argument that can turn ideas. We can turn people's opinion with this, because that's what you see people right now, and that's the point I made earlier. If you are worried about using defund the police, but you're worried about Democrats' election chances, you're a fraud. You're not an activist. So you shouldn't be worried about their election chances. Our goal is to shift public opinion. And you already saw it. There was a morning consult poll that showed that public opinion is already shifting in favor of defund the police.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know once we actually make the argument, the burden of proof isn't on us. The burden of proof is on people who are advocating for reform to explain why the reforms of past didn't work. They need to explain why we spend so much on police budgets and not enough on education. Now, can you imagine if we spend the amount of money that we spend on the police budgets and we had put more in the community centers? Because we had a community center initiative and where I live at in Grandview, it's mostly a black suburb now. It was a heavily gentrified area, but we have a community center. We call it the View. It did a lot of work for the community. It's a great place for teenagers. When I grew up, we played basketball there. It's a great gym. They have a community area where you can have meetings. There are a lot. You can host parties and do fundraisers, do events there. But imagine if it had more funding. That place could easily have more funding. Well, we had another one. Well, we have more programs that focus on developing the mental health of developing youth and teenagers. That's the way you can drop the crime rate. Because that's one thing I always tell people who are critics of defund the police. Because people who are critics of defund the police, they are deeply unserious people because they believe that real life is like a Die Hard movie where police are like saving people's lives, and you might hear one or two stories every once in a while where a cop may save someone, but you also can pull a story of civilians saving someone. It's not like any difference between that. So cops don't prevent crime. They don't save lives. They clean up afterwards. We can easily shift funds to have like mental health advocates that can show up on the scene as domestic violence, not domestic violence, but any kind of like domestic incident. Someone who like specializes in that, they can come in. So you see how we actually have arguments, and they trying to twist it the other way around. They try to pretend that we're the ones who are not serious.
Right.
They can't actually battle us because they don't. They can't even argue against the very basics of what I'm saying right now.
So, Nick, for anyone who doubts what Nick is saying right now and not following it, something came out yesterday or over the weekend. The days are running together, but here in Chicago, we know that the lawsuits against police are well over $200 million. This is a city where we have closed schools, cut funding for teachers, cut after school, cut music, art, and all of these programs that help with the entire student performance. We cut all of those. Yet there was a gentleman who has been sitting in the Cook County jail, and he posted a sign on the window, and people got pictures of it as they were protesting for the Black Lives Matter. That gentleman has been sitting in the Cook County jail for 6 months because he could not afford the cash bail. We have people sitting in jails for parking tickets because they cannot afford the cash bail. So, Nick, to your point, not just community centers, but looking at everything that we're doing. Does this make sense? Are we in a punishment and throwaway where people just don't matter, or are we? Yeah. Go ahead.
People that like to sugarcoat all these issues. One reason I think I kind of developed the following I have is I'm not one to sugarcoat it. When you see people that stay in jail because they're not bail, they can't afford bail, and when you see people getting harassed by the police state because of parking tickets and stuff like that, I call it what it is. We live in a fascist police state where the ruling class is weaponizing the police force against the working class in the field. Because that's what it is. There's a story I read not too long ago where they said they don't like spending a lot of money going after white collar crime because they don't have a good turnover rate on that. They don't prosecute a lot of those cases because it's hard, and they got to spend a lot of resources to go after the white collar crime. So they rather shift attention going after stuff like parking tickets. That's easy cash. That's cash money. That's cash money right there, and that's a deeply regressive way to have law enforcement, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of having a lot of resources spent going after white collar crime, instead of having all that money going after sex trafficking, for example, something that we don't have enough resources that go towards, because that's a rampant. A lot of people don't understand that there's more profits in sex trafficking than drug trafficking.
Oh, absolutely. And here in Chicago, Chicago had over the last summer, we had like 50 black women disappear. Yeah. No alerts, no nothing, nobody looking for them. It was community people that were actually looking for this women, trying to find where they were. And then we had an ex-police officer arrested for sex trafficking. But that is where the story stopped. So real quick, I want to get to this comment that came in. Okay, so this going back to mental health. They say that many mental health providers are charlatans who don't heal, maybe don't know how, and in short, they heal when they can have a steady drip of income. Who is looking over their shoulder to check? And some are lucky some people are lucky if they do get a counselor and find someone who is worthwhile, and it is word of mouth, trusted from friends. Good luck, and they suggest don't look for people in posh offices. So I will say, with every profession, right, the top of the class and the bottom of the class, we still call those people doctor. So you've got to find somebody that you're comfortable with, and then also, from my own experience, working through some of the behaviors that I was exhibiting as a result of PTSD. First, I had to acknowledge it, and then you actually have to do the homework. So it's not, you don't sit down and have a conversation and suddenly have a breakthrough. Part of this is, like, what I was looking for was practical things that I could do when I started to have an issue with a PTSD moment. And so something as simple as, like, it never occurred to me, take one of those hair bands and snap it on my wrist, and that helps refocus the alpha waves in the brain so you're not spiraling. Those are things that I learned from having a good counselor. This was not my first counselor. I had a couple others who, yeah, they were shit. But I was lucky enough to find somebody who fit my personality and fit what I was looking for. I didn't want to have a weepy cry session. I wanted practical steps. You know, step 1, step 2, just like you would if you went to a gym and you were looking for a workout plan. That's what my focus was. So yeah, just because you don't get a good counselor the first time, don't give up on yourself. I think it's a really good point.
This is a struggle that we're going through right now, because not only will we dealing with almost the now to handle this on my sister and my mom's part. There's also not understanding. Cause I know I understand, because I kind of read up on these issues, and I talk to friends who've been through mental health issues, that advancements in mental health care is still in a very infant stage right now. And when you got people diagnosing people, there's a lot of guesswork going on. Because, for example, if you have like a cancer, like if you have lung cancer, they'll look at you, oh, you got lung cancer. It's like it's 1, 2, just like that, right? Mm-hmm. So when you deal with mental health, you got some people will show one symptom if they have dementia, then some person will have dementia and they'll show another symptom. Like, it's like not everyone will have the same qualities built in their own personal mental health issues. So right now there's a lot of guessing going on, and there's a lot of guessing going on what drugs they should take. I had a friend who had a mental health issue going on, and she was prescribed the wrong medicine for years. It made it worse. That made the chemical imbalances even worse. So what happened there? Right. Was that person? It wasn't malicious intent. They just got it wrong. It was a wrong guess, because mental health isn't perfect. So what happened is they went to the hospital the first time, and my sister, she didn't want to be there. She was still in denial, so she was like, "Oh, I'm okay." She just told them what they wanted to hear, and they're like, "Oh, I guess we can't find anything. Take a med." It's like, what? Like, I remember being furious, and I remember I knew this is how it goes, because I knew what to expect. But a lot of people in my family didn't really know what to expect, so they put a lot of faith in these people who was in charge. That was when my mom felt bad, because she didn't know that much about mental health care. She went to the hospital, and they were like, "Oh, she did care of med." She's like, "Well, I guess nothing's wrong." Like, no, there's something clearly wrong. Are you kidding me? Like, I don't care what they said.
You touched on that. It's not just a mental health portion of it, but it's our mentality that, well, okay, so this is a delicate thing, but just because a doctor says X, Y, and Z doesn't mean you shouldn't get a second opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's what I was saying too. One thing, I don't want to get too much impersonal, but that was one thing I was saying too, because there was an intense debate on how we was handling it. We wasn't equipped to handle it, because it was and we are luckily, we love each other when we disagree and love each other. If we was disagreeing and love each other, me and my brother, we had to make a hard decision, and it was tough. We fight each other, and we talk to each other like, "I'm sorry, man." But it was tough to make a decision. We didn't know what to do. But the point the point is that there's not like a solid direction to go when we dealing with the healthcare. There was the argument I was trying to make. So when you go in for the first time, you have someone who may not get it right, whether they give you the wrong medicine or they tell you you're not. They were like, oh, maybe you just need to sleep it off, or you. And that one person literally like she needs to sleep more, get the medicine, then she go back to normal. And guess what? That didn't happen. And then she went in again and went in again. She's been in and out, trying to figure out what's going on with her. So imagine if, and that's what I was trying to advocate for. I was like, yo, she need to get back in there, and she didn't want to. So, but imagine if you just gave up on the first try.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Then you're in a worse spot. So I commend you for your courage, you and your brother and your entire family for going through this in a time of crisis where it is so difficult. So it's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that with us because it is tough to talk about and particularly difficult when you are trying to respect privacy of the individuals involved. So this is such a worthwhile and necessary conversation. Thank you, Nick. So I did notice that your GoFundMe now has met the goal. So what are your next steps? Are you going to continue it? Are you going to use this as an advocacy platform? What are you going to do from here on out?
Well, it's always weird when you make the GoFundMe because you never know what to put at the go. It's like, man, I don't want to think too greedy, but at the same time, mental health care is very expensive. And my mom and my sister's out of work right now because of what's going through right now. So I'm like, man, I put the goal at 5,000. I'm like, if I can hit that, that'd be great. But any money I can raise would help us out. And once again, I got a lot of plans for the future when it comes to my grassroots. Like me going to South Carolina with Bernie was just a start. Once again, I was blessed with this megaphone. I'm going to use it as much as I can, and I got a lot of plans, and because I'm going through this personally, mental health definitely will be on the forefront of any project that I go forward with, whether it be a campaign, whether it be what I'm talking about, because this is why I've been a big advocate of Medicare for all, and that's one of my hardline stances. And you are hard pressed to ever change my mind. I debated this for years, and that's something I'm gonna go forward with and fighting for. And not only that, but it's tackling this in a new progressive way, because it's easy to say let's just go for Medicare for all and fix the problem, but my thing is let's go after capitalism that's causing the problem in the first place. That's why I push for a 4-day work week. That's why I push for the living wage. This is why I'm going after the issues in climate change. But if you don't think the problem that's going on in the environment, the water poisoning, if you don't think the issues that are going on with our food, if you don't think this is affecting our mental health, you're missing one big part piece of the puzzle. And this is what I'm going to challenge on. Like, once again, I never had any hopes of being like some sort of political figure. And whether I win, whether I lose, or whether I'll make it in local media or whatever, I just want to spread these ideas. That's always been my goal. So I'm going to use this personal tragedy that we've been going through. I'm using it to share my experience. I'm not afraid to talk about it. My main thing is I don't want to upset them. It was me. I'm open book. I'm willing to share my experience with me advancing progressive ideas. And these things, if I want to, I'm not just talking about it. I'm about it. So that's what I want to do. So I appreciate you just giving me the platform. They're always good to talk to someone like-minded and.
Oh, absolutely, and this is why we're here to have these conversations. And shout out to everybody in the comments. You are completely bringing this conversation up a notch. There's so many great comments.
I didn't see the comments yet.
Oh, you'll have to go back and see. And I do hope that you continue this conversation. We had a really great comment about how to reform the police, and it goes back to what Andy and I started the program. These down ballot races, because in a lot of cases you are electing this person, or you are electing the people who appoint the leadership within the police force. So if they are continually making excuses for bad officers, refusing to prosecute, do all of these things, That's your DA, that's your state's attorney. These are your local mayors, things like this. Vote them all out and tell them why, and make sure that the new candidates know this is why we took this action, and you will serve the public. So that's one of the pieces. And then a really nice comment about someone else who says that they were taught by their counselor how to handle situations without being abrasive. And she says, I believe it's she, I'm not sure. I was raised in a multicultural blended family, and help was needed. They got it, and they were not ashamed of seeking help, and was told, I also told who one should not go to. So it just, there's tremendous amount of conversation, and I appreciate everybody sharing their information and
Yeah, I need to check
updates.
it out. I need to check that out.
Yeah, go back and check out the comments. They're wonderful. And so real quick before we get out of here, I just want to put in a plug for Friday's show. Andy and I started this morning talking about the primary wins, and you will be amazed when we talk to Warren Lynch on Friday. He's coming back, and we're going to talk about all the progressives that have won, not just in New York and Kentucky, but all across this country. And the primary is not yet over. So while mainstream media and corporate news is not talking about those wins, oh boy, wait till you see the sheer volume of progressives, open progressives championing progressive policy that are winning in their primaries. So check out that. And Nick, hang on just a minute before we close out here, and I'll talk to you when we end out. But thank you so much for coming back, and we just love you and everything that you do. And you're just such a breath of fresh air, even going through such a troubled time right now. So thank you.
I appreciate you.
Very good. Yeah, see, we're fun here. So if you got a topic and a guest or whatever, come on in, let us know. Or send us an email to progressiveinsider@gmail.com with your story ideas, and yeah, we'll put you on. So no problem. So with that, we're going to get out of here this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day, and to Twitch, y'all better take a look at some of your partners there. They're not doing right. So let today be a lesson for you. So on behalf of Andy, who's gone, and our guest here, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Friday.
Thank you.